For years, Barack Obama has represented calm strength, the kind of leadership that values thought, restraint, and purpose. His ability to rise above conflict has often set him apart, making him a model for those who believe that true power lies in grace, not volume. But on one particular evening, that calm was tested in an unexpected way by none other than Ivanka Trump. It was a packed auditorium filled with politicians, journalists, and thought leaders. The event was billed as a conversation on leadership and integrity in the modern world. Two speakers had been invited to share the stage: Barack Obama, the former president, and Ivanka Trump, the daughter of another. The air was charged even before they appeared. Two figures from opposing worlds, both symbols of influence, both seen as reflections of vastly different values. Ivanka was introduced first. As she stepped to the podium, the room quieted. She was poised, polished, and confident, her heels clicking softly on the floor, her smile practiced but professional. To her credit, she carried herself with the self-assurance of someone used to the spotlight. Yet beneath the applause was a subtle tension. Everyone knew who she was and whose daughter she was. Her father, Donald Trump, had divided the nation like few others in modern history. Ivanka, however, had spent years trying to define herself separately, the composed businesswoman, the measured voice in a chaotic political dynasty. That night, she wasn't there to talk about fashion or business. She was there to make a point, and she wasn't about to let her moment pass quietly. At first, her tone was warm and diplomatic. She spoke about responsibility, values, and the importance of family, ideas few could disagree with. But as her words continued, her tone sharpened. The sweetness in her voice thinned, and her smile became more deliberate. What began as a speech on leadership soon turned into something else entirely. "I've always believed," she said, her voice calm but cutting, "that real leadership isn't about holding a title or delivering elegant speeches. It's about understanding the struggles of everyday Americans, about staying grounded in family, faith, and hard work. Unfortunately, when we look back at some of our past leaders, that connection seems to have been lost." The shift in the room was immediate. No one needed her to say his name. Everyone knew who she meant. Her remarks were aimed squarely at Barack Obama. The polite smiles in the audience faded into a collective hush. Ivanka pressed on, her tone gaining confidence. "Under certain administrations, we saw leaders who were more focused on government handouts than empowering people to stand on their own. Policies that sounded compassionate but only encouraged dependency. That's not leadership, that's detachment." She paused, letting her words hang heavy in the air. It was a direct challenge, not just to Obama's politics, but to his legacy. The woman who had built her reputation on composure had just thrown down the gauntlet before one of the most respected leaders of his generation. When Ivanka finished, the audience didn't quite know how to react. Some clapped politely, others avoided eye contact altogether. All eyes, though, turned toward the back of the room, to Barack Obama, who had been quietly listening, his expression unreadable. He didn't move. He didn't frown, smile, or whisper to anyone nearby. He simply sat still, arms folded, his gaze focused on Ivanka. Those who knew Obama recognized that look, the calm before the storm. He wasn't ignoring her, he was calculating. And in that quiet, the tension became almost unbearable. Minutes passed. Then, as Ivanka turned slightly toward him, expecting a rebuttal, Obama rose from his chair. The room fell completely silent. He didn't rush to the stage or grip the podium. He simply stood with the relaxed confidence that had defined his presidency. And when he finally spoke, his voice was steady, deliberate, each word measured. "You know, it's interesting. The longer I listen, the more I realize that leadership isn't just about words, it's about understanding what those words reveal." The audience leaned forward. Ivanka straightened, bracing herself. Obama paused, then continued, his tone still calm. "I heard you speak about family, about connection, about staying true to values. And that's important, but sometimes the people who speak most about integrity are the ones trying hardest to prove they have it. The words weren't shouted, but they landed like thunder. Ivanka blinked, caught off guard by the quiet sting. Obama didn't raise his voice, didn't insult her directly. He simply peeled back the layers of her rhetoric, exposing the insecurity beneath the polish. Then came a pause, a long, uncomfortable one. Obama looked directly at her and said, almost gently, "Soon, Barron will know who his mother really is." The room froze. It was a cryptic, unexpected remark, not cruel, but cunning in its subtlety. Ivanka's practiced composure faltered, her expression stiffened, her jaw tightening ever so slightly. The crowd exchanged uncertain glances. What had he meant? It wasn't an insult. It was something deeper, something that struck beyond politics. Ivanka swallowed hard. For the first time that night, she seemed unsure what to say. Obama, still composed, stepped closer to the microphone. His voice remained calm. "Do you remember what your father once said about you? I imagine you've spent a long time trying to forget." Her eyes flickered with alarm. The audience shifted, unsure where this was going, but they could sense the emotional weight behind his words. Obama wasn't mocking her. He was holding up a mirror. Everyone knew the comments he was referring to, the ones that had caused public outrage years ago, the ones Ivanka had spent her career trying to distance herself from. He didn't need to repeat them. The silence was enough. Obama wasn't attacking her politics. He was addressing something deeper, the personal struggle of a woman caught between image and reality, legacy and identity. And that was far more devastating. Ivanka's composure cracked. The cool confidence she'd projected moments earlier began to crumble. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to steady herself at the podium. The audience could see it, the sudden vulnerability behind the polished surface. She opened her mouth, tried to respond, but no words came. Her throat was dry, her thoughts tangled. Obama had done what few had managed. He had disarmed her without a single insult, using truth, quiet, unyielding truth, as his weapon. Finally, she snapped. "I don't need to take this," she blurted, her voice rising, shaking slightly with emotion. "I'm not going to stand here and let you undermine me like this." But the fight in her voice only made her sound desperate. The power dynamic had shifted completely. The woman who had begun her speech in control was now unraveling before an audience of hundreds. Then, abruptly, Ivanka turned and walked off the stage, her heels striking the floor like punctuation marks of frustration. She didn't look back. The silence that followed was deafening. Obama remained where he was, hands loosely clasped, face calm. He hadn't shouted, he hadn't gloated. He had simply waited for the truth to do what it always does, surface. And after a long pause, he finally spoke again, almost as if to himself. "I've updated her software." The room broke into a murmur. Some chuckled nervously, others simply stared in awe. The line was dry, understated, and completely devastating. In one short phrase, Obama had summed up everything that had just happened. He hadn't humiliated Ivanka. She had undone herself. All he had done was hold steady while the truth worked its quiet power. Then, after another long moment, Obama stepped toward the microphone once more. His tone softened. "Sometimes," he said, "we get so caught up in defending ourselves, in proving who we are, that we forget the only thing that really matters is the truth. The truth doesn't need noise. It doesn't need anger. It simply is, and eventually, it comes to light." He looked around the room, his gaze gentle but firm. "None of us are perfect, but we all have a choice, to live in denial or to live in truth. And truth," he smiled slightly, "always wins in the end." He paused, then looked out over the audience one last time. "There's always room for honesty, always room for connection. And as for you, Barron, he added with a quiet sincerity that disarmed even the most cynical in the crowd. "Remember that you can always reach me." It was a small, humane moment, a reminder that beyond politics, beyond family names, there are lessons passed from one generation to the next, and that leadership, at its core, is about setting an example for those who come after. As Obama stepped away from the podium, the audience rose in a slow, collective standing ovation. No dramatics, no music, just respect. He hadn't just defended his legacy, he had demonstrated, once again, why it existed. In that quiet room, after the noise of confrontation had faded, one truth remained clear. Power built on noise fades, but the kind built on integrity, on calm, steady truth, endures. And that night, Barack Obama reminded everyone why his name would be remembered long after the shouting stopped.